Hey viewers, today I will be reviewing my first ever multiplayer main, the SCG 003S. Now, this car was from launch obviously, and that means it's been through a variety of phases, like a nerf early in the game's lifespan, unfortunately, which brought down its handling in Nitro, although the change in meta means it would have no longer been used in multiplayer anyways. This car has a rocky reputation to players just like the others of the same speed trio that is the Ford GT and Cadillac CN. But in this review, I will be trying to deconstruct this car's stats and performance to see whether or not it can be viable for multiplayer. Now, obviously it won't be a car review if we didn't talk about the car itself, even outside of Asphalt 9, because otherwise we wouldn't even have it in-game. SCG, or known as Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus, is an American manufacturer. I know, it doesn't sound like it very much, does it? Who produces, obviously, road cars, because otherwise they wouldn't be a manufacturer. And the SCG-003, as we know it, was revealed in Geneva in 2015, originally codenamed the P33. And if you didn't know this, there are three different variants of the SCG-003. There's the 003C, the Competizione version with the V6 engine, built for FIA GT use, which means you can race this version in FIA GT3 or even GTE if you even manage to convert it to that spec somehow. And the 003CS, the Competizione Stradale, which is a road version of the 003C that has a little bit of changes to let it drive on the road. Not very much, but it also has a new V8 engine, and it also removes all the engine restrictors on it. And lastly, the 003S, the one we have in Asphalt 9, which is known as the Stradale. It has a quote-unquote livable interior, which probably means you can actually like drive in the interior and not, need to worry about bringing an extra car to haul your stuff around. And it's also been built directly for the road. And both the Stradale and Competizione Stradale versions share the same twin-turbo 4.4-liter BMW V8. This obviously is a low production version, and it's been succeeded already by the 004 series, which is a new design and designed to compete with the already late Ford GT second generation, but that one isn't included in Asphalt 9. But we do have the 003, so we can go for that right now. Fortunately, I do have this car fully upgraded at Golden Max, so I can natively review the car itself at its fullest potential and compare its full stats to the other cars. Since this car does fall under the high-speed, less cornering archetype, I can compare it to similar cars from other classes. The Apollo N definitely does feel like an upgrade over this car, but since they're not exactly the same archetype, it's not a perfect comparison. The SCG, and obviously being an inferior car, has a lower top speed, worse acceleration, along with significantly worse handling, but the Nitro is ironically better since the Apollo N does fall short in its Nitro efficiency. Against the Lotus Avaya, the SCG does ironically have a better top speed, although in every other stat it does actually fail to it, even if the Nitro of it is only a tiny bit worse. But the Lotus is a very balanced car that I unfortunately don't own, so I won't be able to compare them. If you disregard the fact that my SV isn't Golden Max. Against the Aventador SV, the SCG again does have a higher top speed, but in every other way it is worse than the SV. This is probably the closest car we have in Class A to the SCG, although the SCG stats are a very special case since it is an outdated car and it does focus exclusively at its top speed in such a low rank. My thoughts on just the stats alone is that it's one of those obligatory archetypes in every game, where it focuses as much as possible in a certain category but falls short in others, as it has extremely bad handling, in fact one of the worst in the game, acceptable nitro efficiency but average acceleration and a stellar top speed that rivals most other cars in the game. If you can manage to harness that top speed, you can be all set for races, but as the track selection in-game becomes more suited for the handling-focused cars, this car's gimmick does become its downfall, as its drifting greatly hampers it, and the average top speed is just far too low to keep up with the other cars. Now that this is out of the way, we can move on to the fun part, which is driving the car, and I'll be taking it to various different tracks to test it. All in career, obviously. We don't have free play and global, so I can't go to tracks like Nevada or Buenos Aires. As mentioned before, this car is nicely built for a straight line, with its poor handling but high top speed and reasonable acceleration. You generally want to avoid driving on technical tracks, and routes should be taken that favor the top speed cars. Since this car is relatively grounded, but obviously not enough to be problematic. You can't really do any tricks to try and keep speed while drifting, and steering should be preferred over drifting on less tight corners. A good tactic is to just perfect nitro your way through, which allows you to lose your speed, but it does allow you to at least take the corner without slamming to the outside wall. And because you're in perfect nitro, you get to get some of that speed back because of that nitro's acceleration. And now, it is also grounded, so you probably shouldn't also really try to do floaties with this car, and punching doesn't really do anything. Although, if you are on a track like Pudong, which is shown right now, some floaty does kind of work when you're going downhill, although it's not enough to where it warrants the, the wide 360 speed loss and also going much wider than you usually do. Now, I will generally favor driving cars like these since they do take a lot more skill and focus compared to the rest of the cars. Now, I will be going off script for now because obviously you need a script for this type of video. I will be giving my personal thoughts on this car throughout this race, since obviously the last time I did a multiplayer race, or not race, but review for this car, this is before I started doing commentary, and also it wasn't as quality as I expected it to be. And also this was before I started getting really good at the game, like top 100 level. If you usually even see me in top 100, because most of the time I barely play this game anymore, unfortunately. Now, I do think this car it does hold a special place to me, because I used to use this thing to carry my way all the way up to Platinum, and sometimes I even used to get through some of Platinum League, although I would have to start relying on my VLF to get myself to Legends League. But this is probably my first ever multiplayer car that I stuck to and just used. Since before I got this car, I was just scrambling about and just using whichever car that actually just worked. Since this was back in like 2020 Asphalt 9 and people still didn't really know what they were doing. And I think it might have even been 2019. Yeah, I have been racing with this thing since 2019, and I still stand by that these cars, they do take quite a bit of skill, especially since that, it's hard to keep speed in these compared to the other Corvette, Corvette clones, as I like to call them. And I feel it feels more rewarding to pull out a win in these, obviously. And yeah, it's just that's exactly what I prefer to do, and that's why I usually end up driving these. And you don't really catch me in multiplayer driving cars like the Apex or the Huracan. Well, I don't have those at 5 stars, so they would be useless anyway. But yeah, I usually just try sticking to these types of cars like the VLF, the Apollo N, the F1 LM, because they're generally just more of my favorites to drive. Anyways, I will leave the races up for here, and I will give a total review at the end, and along with an author's note. At the end of the day, this is a free car to get, so you can't complain very much. When driven properly, this car is powerful enough to get you across Gold League, and probably even Platinum League if you're lucky with your track selection. Although, the main concerning factor is just the inconvenience of even drifting or even turning at all, because it's just handling is just not very good at all. I'd just say this car is probably okay if you learn how to harness speed and keep you off enough, because usually for the average player, it's very dangerous to drive a car like this, since you can get hit by the armada of just Huracan, Corvettes, Apexes, Vandas, you name it. All these cars are willing to take advantage of any weakness that your car has. Like this SCG is just poor handling. And the fact that this car also can't really get itself back up to speed after a knockdown, like, the knockdowns will hurt you very much. And obviously when you corner, that leaves you very vulnerable, since they just 70 miles an hour faster than you in some cases, like the Vanda with its extremely high handling. So yeah, unless you're absolutely sure that you're good at driving these types of car, I don't really recommend driving this type of car out in multiplayer. You probably have better cars to drive for sure, right? Even it's even acceptable if you have to turn to a Corvette Grand Sport if you really need to make your way up the Platinum League, because if you're not able to climb up in leagues, then how will you get better cars, you know? This review was done as a restructure of a previously made but unlisted video about the Ford GT, which is a dedicated review on it. As looking back on it now, it doesn't meet my new quality expectations that I set for myself. And those that are concerned with my being after, my very long downtime from a feature-length video, I'm absolutely fine. Although I have been spending my break from school, kicking back and relaxing with friends, as I do have to return to my school grind in a few weeks from now, as new laws just say that I have to spend more time at school for some reason. And I have been lazing around just doing that, but I will work on getting more videos out for you guys. And I, I'd like to say sorry about lazing around, since I know you guys expect better from me. And anyways, I truly hope you enjoyed this type of video. And if you would like to see more, don't hesitate to let me know. But otherwise, I'm running out of time, and maybe you can consider leaving a like or commenting to boost my rating and algorithm, or subscribe if you really enjoy my content. But that's all for now. I'm signing off.